Welcome, welcome. How are you guys today? Happy Jueves. Happy Thursday. How are you all doing today? So glad to see you all. Bienvenidos. If this is your very first ever Mexico Relocation Guide live stream, your guest or your host today is myself, Mariana. And the purpose of these live streams is to give you a lot of really good information and also answer your questions based on whether you're moving to Mexico, whether you already live in Mexico, whether you are looking to get residency in Mexico, or whatever other questions other people have. So you get to hear other people's questions, and then also. If I can answer them, I will give you my answer. If I can't, then I try to give you some direction as to where you may be able to find some answers. So thank you all so much for being here. I see a couple of you are here already, and I want to thank you all for being here early. Feel free to let people know where you are watching from. I would love it when you. I love it when you say hi, and yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I see a couple of usual suspects, so thank you all so much for joining me again today. A couple of things that I want to point out is for those of you who have no idea, we have a lot of free resources on our website. So I want to show you how you can find them and how you can navigate to them, because I know that when you first land on the website, it seems like there's only one page, but there's actually a lot of resources on the website. So hello, everybody. I see your comments coming in. Thank you so much for being here. Let me share screen real quick. From Maui, man, that is a dream. Although, there's plenty of really beautiful places in Mexico that are very Maui-like. All right, so I went to mexicorelocationguide.com. If you can't see that, Mexico relocation. Oh, you can't see the actual browser, but it's okay. You go to mexicorelocationguide.com, and then you can either navigate to our blog. Just click on blog. There's a lot of different articles that we've written, or videos that we've posted, or live Q&As that we've posted. There's a lot of information here. But maybe you're just looking for something very specifically. Let's say that maybe you're looking for information about Rosarito. So you would go into the search bar at the far right top and type in Rosarito. And then anything that is related to Rosarito has a keyword Rosarito in it, would show up on our search results. Okay, so maybe you're looking for something regarding healthcare. Anything related to healthcare, I would have available for you. And these are all free resources, right? So they're usually blog posts, articles that are very informative, very information heavy. And then once you need actual help with a couple of the processes, and maybe you're looking for a healthcare broker, maybe you're looking for a realtor, maybe you're looking for an immigration facilitator, maybe you're looking for the steps on how to do XYZ, then we have a complete Mexico relocation guide, which the complete Mexico relocation guide gives you the most the most easy to follow steps on a lot of these things that you need when you're moving to Mexico. So a lot of people buy it before they move to Mexico, sometimes years before they move to Mexico. And it gives you very, very detailed steps on a lot of things, but it also includes a very full directory of trusted contacts. So anyway, I don't want to make this a commercial about the online guide. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of where you can find a lot of really good resources. I also have some rental examples. If you guys are just wondering like what the true cost of living in Mexico is, I try to at least every 6 months go into some of the major cities that people are interested in living in and look at the major websites where I would find rental examples like Facebook Marketplace, Inmuebles 24, La Moody, or there's a couple of other ones out there. But and then there's also like that comes with kind of like a little asterisk that a lot of rentals are actually never going to be found online, right? So sometimes the best rentals are found actually by spending some time in the location where you plan to live. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. So thank you all so much for being here. Yeah, post your questions. That's what it's all about. It's for you guys to be able to get some of your some clarity on some of the things that you're wondering. Evelyn. Hi, Evelyn. I'm in Mexico right now in an Airbnb, and the owner has gotten two notifications about missing their mortgage payment. Any information on how to handle this? Well, first of all, I would let the owner know that they're getting notifications, right, about possibly missing their mortgage. I mean, it's honestly not your problem. Unless you're renting it, for 6 months or something, and you've paid them upfront. If for whatever reason, I know that Airbnb came out with something this last 2022 for air cover. So if something is misrepresented or is not accurate about your listing, or or you're put out for any reason, then Airbnb has a pretty good protection on that, or an insurance on that. But yeah, I mean, I don't really think it's your problem to worry about. I would just say go ahead and let them know that they're getting these notifications. That's a bummer for them. Garrett, I plan on doing my canje in Mazatlan the first week of September. Are there any special holidays that week which may cause an obstacle for me? Not the first week of September, but definitely the second week. So the 15th and the 16th is one of Mexico's biggest celebrations, which, if you happen to be in Mazatlan, I think could be really fun. And that is Independence Day, or Dia de la Independencia. And usually the 15th is the grito. So, usually the governor or some official, and if you're in a smaller municipality, then it might be like the mayor of the town, but usually the governor comes out to the main capital and does a grito. In Mexico City, then it's the president, right? He comes out to the Palacio Municipal, and then he does a big grito, waves the flag around, and does kind of like the cry of Dolores, which is a reenactment of what happened on the 15th of September when Mexico became independent from Spain. But anyway, long story short, yeah, the 15th and the 16th are days that I would avoid like the plague on any government offices. And, those are usually the only ones, unless it's like, the 16th is on a Saturday, then there might be what's called a puente, which is a bridge, a vacational bridge. And some government offices will start closing on Friday, and then they won't open again until Tuesday. So just FYI, that's something you may have to look into. I don't know exactly when Independence Day falls this year in September. Let's see. Mexico Independence Day 2023. It's on Saturday. So yeah, just try to avoid, the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th. I would say you're pretty good on that. Thanks for being here, Garrett. Great question. Uh, Yay, awesome. Yeah, I think Mazatlan, by the way, if anybody's wondering, like one of those cities that's good for doing your canje, I think Mazatlan is really a great one. They have a pretty fast turnaround time, and the people there are very kind to work with. It's pretty easygoing. They don't have a really long line. It's walk-ins. It's not really like you need to get an appointment like some of these other offices where you have to get an appointment and then come back either later that day or maybe at a following day in the future. And you certainly don't have to wait in line at 10 p.m. the day before for them to open at 10 a.m. the following day. Like some offices have that. So anyway, Mazatlan is one of those offices that I think is a great idea. If you're going to be, vacationing there or traveling there, or you're going to be living there anyway, I think it's a really good office to do your canje in. Wilfredo, thank you so much for being here. So nice to see you. Say hello to all your family. Nice, nice. Good language school someone has attended in Mexico. I mean, Mexico's a really large country, right? But one that has like a really good reputation is in San Miguel de Allende, and that's a Warren Hardy Spanish school. I'm going to put it in the comments for you. I have had many customers and people who follow us that have had really good success in going or either doing their online courses or actually going in person. There's a couple of other schools in Oaxaca that I think are really good. So it just depends on whether you're looking to immerse yourself or maybe just do it online. Um, the one in Oaxaca is, I'm going to put it up in the comments for you. And the one in Oaxaca is like the kind where you actually stay at the school, they give you lodging, it's like all included, so you're really immersed. And then there's another one in Puebla that I recommend, and that's Zaloa Language School. And what I love about Zaloa is that they teach you Mexican Spanish. And what I mean by that is Spanish, right? Like Español is Español. However, textbook Spanish is a little bit different than Mexican Spanish. And Mexican Spanish has a lot of colloquialisms and different maybe lingo that you might not learn from your books. So anyway, I really like that Saloa gives you kind of more like the practical Spanish, more the informal Spanish versus, the textbook Spanish, which is very formal. So I feel like you would be more likely to be understood by pretty much everybody, right? So anyway, I think you should look into a couple of those. I added them into the comments, so hopefully you check out some of them. Grandpa, love your handle. Are scorpions all over Mexico? Definitely, especially where the weather may be especially dry. By the way, the Spanish word for Scorpios are escorpión, so not very. It's like the same, but with an e in front of it. So and I'm not a scorpion expert, but I know that they are pretty much everywhere, especially where the weather may be drier. Although there's also different kinds of scorpions, like there are the blonde ones, and then there are like the really big black ones, and the blonde ones do exist in the beach towns. So yeah, I would say they're pretty much everywhere. But it also depends entirely on where you live. There's places or people that come out and do pest control, and they will come and spray the surrounding of your house so that there's no bugs and things like that. So that definitely exists in Mexico too. You don't have to worry about these bugs like invading your home. Yeah, great question. Thanks for being here. Louise, thank you so much for asking this, and thank you for being here. Is there an active discount for the Mexico relocation guide? I've had a couple of emails come in for the past 3 or 4 days about discounts for the Mexico relocation guide, and I don't currently offer any discounts or promo codes for the Mexico relocation guide. There's one promo code out there that we put out like years ago, right, on another channel that I don't promote anymore. I don't offer it anymore. But yeah, sorry, I don't have any discounts. I don't have any promo codes. The price right now is $495 US. It's a one-time fee. You get lifetime access. You never have to pay again if I do a price increase in the future, which I have done in the past. We started at $295, then it went to $395, and now it's $495 because we've added a lot of content or a lot of information, a lot more contacts. Like the value of it has expanded, right? We didn't just increase the price for the heck of it. So anyway, long story short, if we ever increase the price on you in the future, you will never pay if you are already a customer. What you pay today is the price that you're locked into, and it's only a one-time fee. It's not yearly, it's not like monthly or anything like that. It's a one-time fee. So yeah, I hope that you find enough value in the $495 for you to pull the trigger at $495. Hey, thank you for being here, Aro Barton. I've been watching and listening to your videos since you started. This is my first live. Ah, bienvenido. Nice. I will be buying your guide and leaving for Hoko around June 1st. Oh, congratulations. I hope you love Hoko. I don't think it gets enough like publicity or like enough airtime or whatever. And I really hope you love it. I'm confident that you will. So thank you so much for your trust. Thank you, Brick. I'm glad that you find useful information on our site. Man, you have no idea. I have a little notebook next to my bed, and every time, I'm constantly reading questions that I see posted either online or on our site or whatever. And then when I see one come up a lot, I'm like, this has to be an article because there's obviously a lot of questions about this. Which, by the way, one question that I've been getting a lot that I think a lot of people have, and maybe nobody's asked on this live stream yet, is why am I posting videos about You can live here for $1,500 a month, or you can live here for $2,000 a month, or you can live here for, you know, basically like very affordably, when the consulate or the requirement for you to get residency is actually, significantly higher than that, like 2,600 or 3,000 or 3,500 in some consulates. So I want to explain that you can live in Mexico. The cost of living in Mexico is very low. Like, I mean, it's very low compared to certainly most places in North America, certainly a lot of places in Canada, certainly a lot of places in Europe, and the list goes on, right? For the developed countries out there in the world. So the cost of living in most of Mexico is significantly lower than a lot of places. However, the consulates use a formula that considers Mexico's minimum wage times a multiplier. And that multiplier is either 300 or 500, right? So you're considering Mexico's minimum wage times 300. And that comes up with, today's, because the minimum wage in Mexico always goes up every year. So today, some consulates are taking that at $3,000 a month for you to get temporary residency. Some consulates are still keeping theirs pretty low at 2,500 or 2,600 US dollars a month to get temporary residency. But the reason, like $2,500 a month in Mexico is a lot of money. Like you could live very well. I mean, and I'm not talking just you individually, I'm talking you and your family. Like you could live very well. The average wage in Mexico for a family of four is 22,000 pesos, which is about $1,200 a month for a family of four. So keep in mind that those two are not the same. Like the requirements that the or that the Mexican consulate requires from you to get residency are not the same as the cost of living. Yes, you will first need to qualify to become a resident to legally be able to live in Mexico, but once you actually qualify, you can significantly lower your cost of living. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Mexico is every country, not just Mexico. The United States is the same, Canada is the same. Like they want to invite people that are going to stimulate the economy, right? Legally. I know there's a lot of illegal immigration too in Canada and the United States, but legally, they want to invite a lot of people that are going to stimulate the economy. So it's the same for Mexico. They want to bring in people legally that are going to buy houses, maybe open up a business, offer employment, things like that. So you have to consider that they're running this as a business. They just because you can live very inexpensively doesn't mean that they want to encourage only the very, very, very inexpensive earners or the lower income earners to be able to come into their country and just get by. So I hope that makes sense. I know it can be a little confusing when I post a video and say, you can live in Playa del Carmen for $2,000 a month or less. And it's absolutely true. But you do have to consider that you first have to qualify for residency. If you have any questions about residency in Mexico or what the income requirements are per consulate, um, refer to this article on the website. I'm going to put it in the comments. And I have a lot of income requirements by consulate. So just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about, every single consulate requires a different income for either temporary or permanent residency. And they vary, it goes all across the board. But the lowest one that I've seen so far is Houston, and that is 2,500 US dollars a month for temporary residency. Whereas, some go up to 3,500 like Seattle. So anyway, and you can absolutely go to a different consulate if they don't require you to live in the immediate area, which, for example, Houston doesn't. Houston takes people from out of state. So anyway, I hope that gives you guys some clarity. If you have some questions about that, feel free to post it in the comments. Nice. That's awesome. Congratulations, Louise. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. Seriously. My travel plans have been delayed again, but I keep moving forward. Instead of an April departure, I'm now aiming for September in Mexico by October. Thanks for doing this. Oh, that's awesome. Nemo, I haven't seen you in a while. I've missed you. Well, maybe you're going to be able to catch the celebrations. I hope you do. It's a really cool party. Okay. Safety. Please talk about the safety of Mexican banks and keeping a considerable amount of funds there. Are there any risk of a bad employee letting bad people know about your bank balances? Um, there is such a thing as not about your bank balances, but there is such a thing as there have been cases of terrible tellers, right? Like really, really, really terrible people that work at banks that when somebody makes a large withdrawal from a teller, not from the ATM, but from a teller, maybe because there's a limit at the ATM. But anyway, there have been cases all around the world, not only in Mexico. This is known as jugging. Look it up. It happens in the United States and Canada too. But anyway, where the teller tells, somebody that is either waiting outside or maybe somebody who's pretending to be a customer, just kind of loitering in the lobby, that, a large withdrawal has been made. And then, that person has been mugged outside. So there have been cases of that happening. I would say my best advice on this is try at the very least, if you're the reason why some people make large withdrawals is because, they have to pay rent, because a lot of landlords want you to pay rent in cash. So try to find out if your landlord would be okay with a wire transfer instead from a Mexican bank to a Mexican bank, so they can keep their commissions, their fees, right, as low as possible, and they can keep as much of that money as possible. Or if they're going to pass on the fee to you, that fee is as low as possible to you. So, try to negotiate that, see if that would be better, because nobody wants to carry that amount of cash um, anywhere. And second, go to a bank that people like, that you absolutely trust, that you don't go to just any bank. Go to a bank where you have a relationship. Go somewhere where, you see a large number of people. Try to always go with somebody. Like there's ways to protect yourself, and I don't think these are exclusive to only Mexican banks, but I think anywhere in the world, right? If you're going to be making a large withdrawal like that, I would say, it has happened, but I don't want to spread the fear that this is the most common thing in the world and that you're automatically going to be targeted, because I don't want anybody to feel like they have a target on their back, although I do think that you should practice some caution. The other thing is try to make smaller withdrawals throughout the month so that you can accumulate whatever you need for the month, as opposed to making one very large withdrawal, right? And then the other thing is just go to an ATM. There are plenty of ATMs that are very well secured. Um, they have, the only way that you can get in is through using a debit card, which has a chip, and then it opens up a door. Try to never go outside of business hours, right? Try to go whenever there's actually somebody working at the bank. All those things, just, there's power in numbers, right? So try to go whenever there's a lot of people. There are protections for banks of how much they protect if in case, they were to get hacked or some other, threat like that, kind of like the FDIC in the United States. The exact amount, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there are some safeguards, and your bank should be able to tell you those when you open a bank account. So I would say go ahead and ask those questions to your bank representative when you are opening a bank account, like how much is your money insured for, and what do you need to do in order for you to remain an active member of that bank, or that your bank account doesn't get closed. That's also something important to know. If your bank account doesn't see any activity for a period of time, different banks have different thresholds. So some banks say, if we haven't seen any withdrawals or deposits in 12 months, then it's costing that bank more money to basically manage, right, your account versus what they're getting from it. And obviously, there's like limits on all of this too. If you are holding, $50,000 in there, or even 50,000 pesos, and you might not have anything to worry about. But if you're holding a very low balance and there hasn't been any activity in it, don't be surprised if they close your account. So make sure that when you open a bank account, you know exactly how much money you're supposed to have in there every month for it to be free, how many withdrawals you're allowed to make every month before you're charged the fee, or any other stipulations that you need to know, so that there's no surprises along the way. And if you don't understand what you're signing, then bring somebody with you. Either that's a facilitator or a friend who can help you translate some of these things. So again, that you're left with no surprises at the end. Um, Mexicana in Guanajuato. Okay, so here, there you go. You have another Spanish school recommendations. Escuela Mexicana in Guanajuato. Great experience. Okay, nice. Thank you for sharing that, Brenda. If you're interested in beach towns to retire in Mexico, I highly recommend going to our website and typing in best beaches. And I have a list of beaches that I recommend retiring in. This isn't a complete list. This is only a few of my recommendations. This isn't all the beach towns in Mexico, but I do have a list of best beaches that I recommend. So again, go to the search bar, look up best beaches, and you'll see the very top result. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love Colorado Springs. I lived there briefly for like 2 years. I love Colorado Springs. It never got old, the views. Guadalajara or Querétaro at the end of the year. That's awesome. Which one are you leaning towards? I'm interested in knowing. I personally love Querétaro. I think it has a lot going for it. First of all, it has HEB. So, I'm a sucker for an HEB. I grew up in Texas. HEB is like, there's no place like my HEB. But I love HEB. And, Guadalajara has a special place in my heart because that's actually where I grew up. So I love both a lot, but I prefer Querétaro, hands down. So I'm interested in knowing what you're leaning towards. For home rentals, is it standard practice in Mexico to purchase renters insurance? It's not standard practice for you to purchase renters insurance. That seems like a tongue twister. But it is common practice for you to put a deposit down and then the last month's rent. So, they have like a significant amount of your money up front for them to cover incidentals and things like that. However, there are some companies that offer renters insurance, although it depends on the landlord. Some landlords will ask for it. And you can certainly hire it on your own and, it'll cover you just in case of something, an accident, right? But no, it's not really common for them to ask for it when you sign a lease. Good question. What are the best times a month to move to Mexico and rent? Great question. I think it depends on where in Mexico you're moving to. Very touristy areas, like for example, especially the beach areas like Playa del Carmen, Huatulco, Puerto Escondido, Puerto Vallarta. Maybe not so much Mazatlan because Mazatlan is like a very large city, but maybe like Sayulita, Manzanillo, all these places right on the coast, and maybe even on the other side like Veracruz. Maybe not Veracruz too much either, because I don't think it's like heavily touristed by snowbirds, but any place that is highly visited by snowbirds in the winter, I would say the best time to rent in one of those places would be in the summer or after the winter, like, at the beginning of May or, the middle of spring when people go back to uh, the north, either mostly Canada or like Montana, uh, the northern states in the United States. I would say May, um, June, July, August, September. Another thing that I think is a good idea about renting in those months is in most places, May and June tend to be the hottest months. So you get a really good idea of whether you're going to like living in that place. Right. And then, for a lot of places, the summer is also very hot, especially in these areas that I'm talking about. So you get a really good idea if you're going to be able to withstand this weather for this amount of months. It also tends to be that September and October are some of the rainiest months in a lot of places. So it just gives you a really good idea of if you're gonna like this place at the worst time, right? When it tends to have like the most extreme weather, then you're gonna love it when it's winter and springtime. Um, so I hope that helps you. Also, the reason why these areas tend to be better to rent in May or all the way through October, even through November, is because some of the places, like especially Huatulco and maybe some smaller areas like Sayulita, Manzanillo, or Barra de Navidad, like all those areas are smaller, so the inventory is obviously going to be smaller too for the amount of rentals. And if there's an influx of people coming in and taking in those rentals, then there's going to be less available for you to see in the winter. Another thing that happens too, especially for example in Puerto Vallarta, and a lot in Huatulco too, is there's a rate for the winter and then there's a rate for the summer. And those rates are significantly different for a lot of rentals. So sometimes you're better off securing a rate in the summer, right? And at least paying that for 6 months. And they might raise your rent in December, but at least you're getting the lower end of that rate for at least a couple of months. So yeah, that's what I recommend. Although it totally depends on where you're moving to. A lot of places in central Mexico that doesn't apply. So really any time. Although summer is when a lot of people in Mexico move, like Mexicans, locals, nationals. So maybe you want to, you know, also consider that when you're moving. I love that you guys chit chat with each other. That makes me so happy that you guys are sharing with each other. And yeah, I love it. Thank you for doing that. Um, I'm on Social Security disability and I need a safe place where the rent isn't too high. Yeah, great. It just depends. You have to really ask yourself first. I would ask myself more than just like safe and the rent isn't too high, because I think that all of the places that I recommend, I would consider safe. Second of all, where your rent isn't too high, I think any place in Mexico, you're going to be able to find an affordable rental. It just depends on where you're willing to look and how long you're willing to wait to find that rental, right? Or how long you're willing to or how much you're willing to look, really. That's really what it comes down to. Um, so I would say that the first thing that you really need to ask yourself is, what weather am I looking for? Are you looking for big city? Are you looking for small town? Are you looking for an area where there's a lot of English speaking foreigners? Or does that really not matter to you? Are you looking for an area that has, an international airport? Are you looking for something that's a little more rural? So you really have to ask yourself a couple of these questions. Again, I have a really good guide that I put together on our site, and it has these questions like what you should be asking yourself, and I'm going to put it in the comments. So hopefully you find it either on the replay or on our YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and transfer all these comments. But yeah, if you go search our site too, you can just look up where should you live in Mexico. And I have a really helpful guide. Like another thing that you may want to consider is like elevation, right? A lot of central highland cities are very nice, very year round, great weather. But if you're very sensitive to high elevation, then they might be out of the question for you. Like, for example, Querétaro or even San Miguel de Allende, which is higher elevation, um, Mexico City, Guadalajara, those are all above 5,000 feet in elevation. So you have to consider, are you very sensitive to that? And then for anybody out there, I get questions sometimes too. Like I really do have a hard time walking on stairs or anything that isn't, a ramp. Maybe I have a walker, things like that. I would say if you have trouble going up or down stairs, maybe you have mobility issues, but maybe as long as there's a rail, you can go up a stair or down a stair and you'll be fine. But for somebody who has a really hard time going up and down stairs, I have to tell you, Mexico might not be the best country for you, because even if there are places in Mexico that have ramps and a lot of downtown areas have ramps, but there are still going to be a lot of businesses, a lot of buildings, and a lot of government offices and retailers that just aren't going to have ramps and aren't going to have things for you to be able to get up and down easily without at least the help of somebody. So if you have somebody that's going to be able to help you out, then I would say, yeah, there's a lot of places that you can live in. However, if you really have to be honest with yourself, and if you can't get up and down stairs by yourself, it's going to limit at least significantly the places that you can go to without help. So I hope that helps somebody that's watching and might be wondering that question. How about receiving mail from the USA? Yeah, great idea, Grandpa. It depends on whether you want to receive that mail physically or whether you want to receive that mail digitally. There's all kinds of traveling mailboxes, which is a very cool service you sign up for, and they give you like a P.O. box, or they give you a mailbox number or a street number. And you get all your mail sent there. They scan it for you. They send you an email with, a scan of all the things that you're getting. And then, some services will read it for you, or not read it for you, but open it, scan it, and then send you a copy of whatever letters you're getting. So that way you don't miss out, right? If you don't have an address in the United States from a family member or significant other or whatever. And then there's also services in certain cities in Mexico that will actually have a P.O. box on one of the borders, like whether it's Nogales or Laredo or maybe Tijuana, and then, or, other parts of the country where there's a border. And they have a service there or a mailbox there where you get your mail sent to. Like maybe you want to get your magazine, or maybe you want to get, certain papers, like actual physical papers. So you can send it to this P.O. box that they'll give you, and then they will ship it to their offices in Mexico. And then you can actually receive your physical mail. There's a bunch of different services, so I can't tell you like one by one, but that's the best way. The other thing is you do have an address when you live in Mexico. When you move to a place, you will have an actual physical address, which you can receive things to, like Amazon packages or other packages from other retailers in Mexico if you choose to buy things online. Um, the thing that I would just caution you is if you're waiting to get like actual mail from the United States to your address in Mexico, I would count on it being 50-50 that you'll get it. It's not very reliable. The Correos de Mexico, or like the postal service in Mexico, it's not crazy reliable. Things get lost all the time. So a lot of people use things like DHL, Estafeta, FedEx, these other private companies that just have a much more efficient operation and seem to have a finer tuned way of making sure that you get your things, especially if you're waiting on getting something like a passport or something more important like that, like maybe some documents needed for you to close on a house or things like that. So yeah, it all depends on what you're trying to get. I hope that helps you. All right, I'm trying to see what questions you guys have. Thank you all for being here. I'm seeing some of your comments, and you're saying hi from Canada, England. That's very cool. Um, that's awesome. I just signed a lease agreement for an apartment in Puerto Vallarta with a move-in date of May 1st. That's great. Or is it January the 5th? I'm assuming you mean May 1st. That's exciting. I'm so excited for you. Something that you have to keep in mind, or just remember, is that uh, date formats in Mexico are the day, the month, and then the year, except for when you get your FMM at the airport. For some reason, like government just does things very backwards. Like they have everything else with the way that Mexico does their date format, which is the date, the month, and then the year. But then the FMM, the new digital FMMs that they're giving you at the airport, when you're filling out your information, be very, very, very attentive, or pay really good attention to what you're filling out and how they're asking you to fill it out, because they actually ask you for the way that the US and Canada does things, which is the month, the date, and then the year. So of when you came in and when you're planning to leave and all that. So anyway, congrats, Marcelo. I'm so excited for you. Puerto Vallarta is a great place. I think you're going to love it. And again, you're moving, probably at the best time. I mean, it's going to be, I think, a great experience. That's awesome. This is a great question. If you rent an unfurnished apartment, where do you buy furniture if you're on a budget? Like a mattress, refrigerator, etc. Depending on where you live, if you don't have, a lump sum of money to buy like a mattress or a refrigerator, washer, dryer, all these things together, because that could come up pretty expensive pretty quickly if you're buying everything at once. There are a couple of services that will rent out furniture to you over over a long period of time, like over a year. They tend to be way more expensive than if you bought those things. Not to mention that they're probably used, right? So if you're looking for very inexpensive things, I would say Facebook Marketplace, number one. Um, Mercado Libre, yes, but also you need to, like Mercado Libre, you need to have a Mexican credit card or debit card. So if you don't have a bank account in Mexico, it might be hard for you to purchase things on Mercado Libre. The others would be just asking on Facebook groups. Like all kinds of people are moving out all the time. So, if you don't know how to use the search function on any Facebook group, I highly encourage you to look for it, right? Or Google it after this live stream, how to search on Facebook groups, and type in furniture and see who's selling their furniture. So yeah, I would say that's the best way. There are a lot of really inexpensive pieces of furniture out there that maybe somebody bought because they thought they were going to stay for the long term, and then come 6 months or a year, they for whatever reason they're moving back or they're moving to a different city and they can't take their things with them. So Facebook Marketplace, if you have the right way to purchase Mercado Libre, or Facebook groups, I think are a great way. Or, sometimes it's not very common to have like garage sales per se in a lot of places in Mexico. I know there are some in some like the expat cities because that's like a very North American thing, right? Or very like Mexico is part of North America. So forget I said that. That was very ignorant. But um, it's a very like US Canada thing. It's not so much like at least not central Mexico thing, maybe more like in the northern part of Mexico. So you won't find as many like garage sales, but I do think groups is a great way. Great question, Dominique. Once I get temporary residency approved by the consulate in Canada, do I extend it for another 3 years once in Mexico? Once I get the extension, is there a minimum stay requirements to keep it? Great questions. So for everybody who's wondering or anybody is new around here, when you get, this is for temporary residency only. Temporary residency needs to be renewed, whereas permanent residency, when you get your initial approval at a consulate, you finish the process in Mexico, you get your card, and that's it. It's indefinite. You have it for life. Whereas temporary residency, you get your initial approval stamp at the consulate, and then you need to travel to Mexico to do what is known as canje, and that is the exchange of the stamp for then the card. Initially, you get 1 year on your temporary residency, and then you get, after that first year, you can come and go to, as long as you have that card, you can come and go whenever you want. Like there's no limit of like, you need to be here for 6 months or you need to have not left for, the last 2 months out of 5 years or anything like that. No, whenever you're a temporary resident, you can come and go as you please. But you do need to be back in Mexico to renew that residency after the initial year. So after year one, and by the way, let's say your residency expires, on the 20th of May, right? Assuming that there's 30 days between now and the 20th of May, you have up to 30 days before the 20th of May, meaning today or tomorrow, whatever's 30 days, to start that process of renewal. So you can't start it like 2 months ahead of time. You can't start it 3 months ahead of time. You can start it up to 30 days before. You can start it the day of or even a couple of days after it's been expired, but you can't start it more than 30 days before. So you have to be in Mexico to renew. And then your other question is, can I extend it for 3 years? Yeah, so then after you renew, you can renew for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. It just depends on how much money you have because they all have different fees. I would say absolutely if you have the money, which is not that expensive, it's like $400 to renew for 3 additional years. It's in pesos, so it fluctuates depending on the exchange rate. But to renew for an additional 3 years, it's not that expensive, well worth the money, and you can come and go as you please. There's no requirement for a permanent or temporary resident right now in any constitutional law of immigration for you to live in Mexico for a specific amount of time. Some consulate employees will try to say that will try to say that you have to live in Mexico for 6 months out of the year, or that you have to move to Mexico within the next 6 months for you to um, be able to get your residency. That's not the case. Some consulate employees, you do have to move, or you do have to come to Mexico within 180 days from when they give you that approval stamp at the consulate for you to then make it good for a residency card. You do have 180 days for that, but that doesn't mean you have to move to Mexico. Okay. And I would be cautious if a consulate employee or whoever is interviewing you, usually the consul is the one that's asking you any questions about your plans to move to Mexico, or when are you moving to Mexico, or where are you moving to Mexico, or why are you moving to Mexico, right? If they are asking you, it's because they want to, put a full picture together. That's usually what the interview is like, if they ask you anything. If they do ask you those things, the last thing you should say is that Mexico is your plan B. You should never say that you don't know if you're going to live in Mexico. Actually, you're just getting this residency because you heard that the income requirements might go up every year, and you just want to secure it now because you don't know what might happen in the future, and maybe in the future you have plans to move to Mexico. I wouldn't say that. Yes, I'm sure some people get lucky and they get residency even though they say that, but I definitely would avoid saying that to the consul, because to me, if I were the consul, I would say, well, then come back in a few years, right? When you're ready to move to Mexico. Which for a lot of people, that is what has happened when they say that. Or if you say, I'm just going to go on a scouting trip and I don't really know where I'm going to live, like I might look at a different few places. I also wouldn't say that. I would instead focus on like, hey, I'm really interested in Querétaro. That's probably where I'm going to live. I have a place already there, right? That I'm looking at renting, but I might explore more of the country because I'm so interested in whatever, right? But just stay away from making yourself seem like you're uncertain. And again, I know many of you have probably been asked this and have said some of the things not to say, and you've still been granted residency. That's fine. Good for you. I'm so excited for you. That's awesome. And maybe many of you have never been asked anything other than your bank statements. That's also great. But if you are asked, I would refrain from saying that. I would also refrain from saying anything regarding that you're like an economic refugee, or that you can't afford your life in Canada anymore, or the United States, and Mexico is far more affordable. I would just not say anything regarding that. I would just say, hey, I'm really interested in the culture, and I think it's beautiful, and in my retirement I want to change it up, right? Like I'm excited to change up this new chapter in my life. So anyway, hope that helps. Good luck. Is it possible to get the regularization visa with an unexpired FMM? No, it is not. You have to wait for your FMM to expire. I'm getting clarity on an immigration facilitator that we recommend in Huatulco right now that does do what you're asking about, Todd. She does help people get the special regularization, even though their FMM isn't expired. So let's say you get it for 180 days and you've only been in the country for 7 days. She does help people do that. But I'm getting clarity on a couple of things before I promote it anymore, because I want to make sure that I promote the very best things for our audience. So there is an option if you're absolutely like, if you have a good extra chunk of change, is basically what I'm trying to get at. And you absolutely cannot wait the 180 days in Mexico for that to expire and then get the special regularization, and you don't qualify the traditional way of getting residency, then yes, there is a way. But for everyone else, I am going to hold off right now until I get some clarity on some things. I want spring-like weather. year round. I can't do humid summers. Yeah, then I think the beach areas are not for you. Uh, Very honestly, if and it depends on what you consider humid too. I mean, like for me, humid might be something very different because I also spent a large chunk of my life in South Texas, so I can withstand that, and that's like beach. That's the beach part of Texas. But for somebody else, that might be fully intolerable, and I get that. So the only way you're ever gonna know is to actually spend some time there in some of that weather. Yeah, Las Vegas is another consulate that I really recommend if you don't have more than $2,600 a month. They had a monthly minimum wage of $25.93 last year when I applied for my temporary residency. Yeah, and they did not increase it this year. So Las Vegas is another, and also they take people from outside of Nevada. So if you're not a resident of Las Vegas or you don't live in Las Vegas, you don't have a driver's license of Las Vegas or Nevada, basically, if you're from New York and you're coming only to do your residency, they will take you. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is almost every consulate requires you to have an appointment. They do not take walk ins, except for Phoenix and maybe like a few others that I just don't know of because they're in very, very small towns. But the majority of them, you must show up with an appointment or you will be turned back. So don't waste your time trying to walk in. And they have this information on their website. So if you're ever wondering if you need an appointment or if they take walk-ins or if you want to know more about that, they have that information on their website. And for the most part, I think they do a really good job of updating that because they have probably found or figured that it's better for them to update that information and avoid having to tell that over and over and over and over again, right, to the people that are showing up. Do you need income requirement for a 6-month tourist visa? No, you do not. You may be asked at the airport when you show up, like for proof of where you're staying, like lodging, or you may be asked for bank statements showing that you have some sort of income for your travels in Mexico, especially if you're going to be asking for 180 days. But no, there's not like the same income requirements monthly. Um, Does Mexico City train subway system go to the major airport in Mexico City? Yes, it does. It does, and it's a great, the metro, I think, is a great option for transportation for people who truly want to learn how to live like a local. You got to learn how to use public transport. And yes, it does. I love Valle de Bravo. I have a great video on Valle de Bravo that I think you should check out if you're interested in it. Yes, I have, and I love it. I think it's a beautiful little town. I wouldn't live there because I think it's um it's very touristy, so like it ebbs and flows on how many people there are on a regular basis, and therefore the services that are available at like the grocery stores or the different restaurants and things like that. It's very much like a weekend spot for people from Mexico City that are trying to get away from the city and trying to go into the forest. And there's a lot of recreational activities on the lake. So that's the only reason I wouldn't live there. It's because it's just kind of inconsistent. But I think it's beautiful. So let me share with you that video. There you go. Weather is extreme. Or better yet, if you go to our YouTube channel, just check out Valle de Bravo. But I put it in the comments. And I have a couple of rental examples that I included in there. If you are interested in maybe living in a town that isn't so busy, but still has great year round weather, it's only an hour away from Mexico City, which is the largest city in Mexico and one of the largest in the world. So you have everything available to you. As a permanent resident, do I need a Mexican driver's license to drive in Mexico? So, technically and legally, especially for people who want to drive permanently and get like specific car insurance policies, yes, you are supposed to have a driver's license in Mexico. However, this varies from place to place. For example, in the free zone areas like Quintana Roo, Baja California, parts of Chihuahua, or parts of Coahuila, parts of Tamaulipas, which is considered the free zone. There's a lot of insurance companies that will take your driver's license from up north as long as it's valid, as long as it hasn't expired, and will give you insurance. But there's a lot of companies in central Mexico where if you have residency or you're no longer a tourist, will require you to have a driver's license in Mexico. And one of the cities that has the easiest driver's license procedures in all of Mexico is Mexico City. It's actually very simple to get a driver's license there. So if you're interested and you're going to be in Mexico City anyway, or maybe you're landing there, it's pretty easy to get. We have a great contact that we recommend. He gives you all the steps, right, on a phone call. He doesn't go with you, but he will give you all the steps, charge you like a very nominal fee, like a very small fee, tells you exactly where to go, what you're going to do. And most people get their driver's license that way. Yeah, HEB is definitely Texas. What is HEB? The best grocery store in the world. uh, yeah, see? Thanks so much for being here, Brighton. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, please go check it out. It's Almost Retired in Mexico. So go to youtube.com at Almost Retired in Mexico. He puts out amazing videos, amazing content with lots of really interesting subjects. I love his videos. So lots of rentals available right now in La Paz. Half of the gringos are going home, including me. Yeah, he lives in Oregon, I believe, and spends 6 months out of the year in La Paz. So La Paz is also one of those towns I forgot to mention. For some reason, I always leave Baja California out. But Rosarito, La Paz, Los Cabos, Todos Santos, Loreto, Ensenada, a lot of those places are the same, right? They have a lot of snowbirds coming. And then come May, come April, they go back home because the weather is nicer back home. Okay. So I think everyone else is just chatting with one another. I don't really see a lot of questions. Besides climate, that won't boil me alive, I would definitely want to live around English speaking people, even though I am trying to learn Spanish. And that's mainly the reason why a lot of people love Lake Chapala. Um, because it has really nice weather, it's not too hot, and there's a lot of English spoken. And a lot of the locals, even though everything is in Spanish still, right? Like the menus are still in Spanish, but a lot of them will have like Spanish/English. A lot of the bank employees speak English. A lot of retailers speak English. You're still going to be in Mexico. Like, expect things to still be in Espanol. It's not going to be like Cancun or Playa del Carmen, where you might even get charged dollars for most everything. You're still primarily going to be reading Spanish and dealing with pesos. But I'm sure there are exceptions to every rule, and I'm sure there's restaurants that put their prices in dollars in the Chapala area. But that's primarily why a lot of people choose the Lake Chapala area, because they like the weather and they want to be around a lot of people who speak English while they learn Spanish. I think the same is for San Miguel de Allende. San Miguel de Allende is also one of those towns where there's a lot of English speakers, but it's also not hot. It's significantly drier, I feel, than Ajijic, Chapala, or Jocotepec. So if you're very sensitive to that, that's something you might want to know. Or if you're very allergic to humidity or have Ajijic is not humid by any means, but it can be more than Guanajuato. So anyway, I think you should look it up. We do have, if you're interested in checking out any one of these towns, any one of these cities, and you don't really want to have to deal with renting a car, you don't want to have to deal with knowing where to go or how to figure it out or where to park the car, or you want to check out what grocery shopping is going to be like, but you're kind of like intimidated on asking maybe the butcher like what cuts of meat he's putting out, right, for sale, or you just want to know what it's truly going to be like to live there. Like, where do you pay your electricity? Where do you pay your water? How do you do XYZ, right? Then I highly recommend a relocation tour. The relocation tours are meant to be just that. They're a tour that's meant to be to actually teach you what it's like to live in a local area. And the most important thing is that the relocation tour guides have no agenda to sell you real estate. So they're not going to try to sell you any timeshares or any housing. Which there are plenty of relocation tours for real estate companies that do that, and kudos to them. That's awesome. I'm not saying anything negative about them, but maybe sometimes people are just not ready for the sales pitch, right? And you maybe want to know some other things that a realtor might not tell you. Maybe a realtor is going to try to persuade you in one direction because maybe they have a lot of rentals there, or maybe they have a lot of houses for sale there, whatever the case might be, or maybe they get a commission from that developer, right? So they're really trying to push you in one complex versus another. Well, with the private relocation tour from Mexico Relocation, it's not like that. You get paired up with a local who is most likely from the area. If not, they have lived there for a really long time. Most of them are bilingual. If not, they speak full English. But most of our recommended relocation tour guides are Mexican locals. And yeah, I think they're really fun. You don't have to worry about having your own car. They pick you up, they drop you off, they show you what it's like to live in a certain area, they answer your questions of what it's like to live there locally. And I think it's a great experience. It's very different than a touristy tour, although if you want, it's fully custom. They can incorporate touristy things, right? So, like in Playa del Carmen, we have an excellent recommendation there who's a wonderful ambassador to the Playa del Carmen area. And, he can also show you cenotes or take you to Tulum or see ruins, things like that. So, anyway, I think it's a great option. If you're interested in that, you can go to mexicorelocationguide.com/tours. Yeah, I have quite a lot of information about campgrounds and RV parks. It's in our online guide, and I have a long directory of RV parks and some of the amenities that they offer, links to their sites if they have a site. So, yes, in the Complete Mexico Relocation Guide, I have that information. Received my 3-year temporary residency card today in Playa del Carmen. Congrats! That's great! It took 1.5 hours using a facilitator. That's awesome. Successful story. I love it. That's great. Yeah, great question, Tanya. As a temporary resident, you need to notify INM of change of address, or not question, but comment. I intend to travel around and not settle in one place for more than a month. How or when should I notify of change of address? This is a great question. And I think it affects a lot of you because a lot of you are probably going to land in one place, but you may spend only 3 months there and then move around until someplace fits or feels right. And if this is you, I just want to let you know what can happen. I'm not saying this is going to happen to you, but I just want to let you know what you're legally obligated to do. When you become a resident, you give INM your address. When you do your canje, you give INM your local address. If you don't have a lease or you don't have a permanent address yet, maybe because you haven't found a rental or whatever the case might be, you can give them your hotel address. You can give them your Airbnb address, or in some cases, facilitators will sell you an address, right? And the reason they do that is because if you if you move out of that address, right, which a lot of you I know do, and I encourage it, but I need you to know what can happen. If you give INM an address and then you move a month or 2 months or 6 months later, and then you move again, right, 2-3 months later, well, it might be tedious to make a change of address with INM every time that you move, because most of the time you have to make an appointment, you have to stand in a line. It takes hours, right? So it can be tedious. You are legally obligated to make a change of address within 90 days, but a lot of people don't do it because they're moving around all the time. So what can happen is INM sometimes does random house checks, and they send an INM agent or two, and they check to see that the address that you put down on the paper when you did your canje is the address that they're going to visit and that you should be there, right? So that's why some facilitators will sell you an address, because, or sometimes they include it as part of their services if you don't have a permanent address yet. because they have, right, all a network of addresses, and they can, if an INM agent happens to show up to do a home check, then somebody there can tell them like, yes, you live there, and no harm, no foul, you're fine. If you happen to have one of these INM agents check on the address that you put that you lived in, and you didn't change it, and you're no longer there, and then your Airbnb host says no, they don't live here, they just stayed here for 3 months or whatever, you can get fined. And the worst thing that can happen is you can get your residency taken away. So just FYI, this can happen. It is very rare that this happens, that they do a random house check, especially throughout the country, but it can happen. So just FYI, like, yes, you're obligated to make a change of address within 90 days of moving. So, if you just landed in San Miguel de Allende, you're staying at an Airbnb because maybe your house is finished being built, or maybe you just haven't found the right rental, but you're going to be staying in San Miguel de Allende, then, go in 90 days and change that address at the San Miguel de Allende INM office. But if you're moving around a lot, I would say change your address when you have found a place that you're going to be in pretty permanently. That might be after the 90 days, I get it. But know that these things can happen so that you're not surprised. You're kind of risking it, in other words. All right, everybody. That is it for me today. So I see some just comments with each other, and I'm glad you guys keep chit-chatting with each other. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you've learned something new. Again, I really encourage you to go to the site and go to, oh, that's the Valle de Bravo video. Go to the site and go to our search and type in anything that you're interested in searching, like Valle de Bravo, or, where to live. This is a guide. Where should you live in Mexico? So look that up, right? I have a couple of questions you should be asking yourself. I also have like a best places to live. So, I have a couple of like different cities, and then for every city, I list the top neighborhoods for that city. Um, and the top neighborhoods is, fully subjective, but I went into most of the groups where, there's a lot of English speakers, or maybe even just like a lot of nationals like living in some of these neighborhoods. So I just went to see which ones are the highest rated. Because I'm sure there's a lot of neighborhoods that are not in these lists, but again, you have to consider that they're probably neighborhoods that you wouldn't want to live in, even in particular cities like Puerto Vallarta, right? So at the end of the day, it's up to you to do some of your diligence and still look outside of all the resources that I give you. Even if you're an online guide customer, I think it's still important for you to do some additional research so you see the full picture, right? But I try to give you as much as possible so that that research on your end can really be shorter. So, okay, well, thank you so much, y'all, for being here, and I really, really, really love doing these. I will see you guys next week. Let's see what's going on next week. I don't believe I have a live stream scheduled with anybody. No, I don't. So I'll see you guys on April 27th at 6 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time or 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Yeah, I hope this time works for everybody. I'm open to suggestions on different dates, different times. I think this time works for everybody. At least that's what YouTube tells me, YouTube analytics. But I'm open for you guys to tell me what time works better for you. So yeah, this weekend is Dustin's birthday. So join me in congratulating him for his 43rd birthday. Dustin is my husband, by the way. He helps me run everything on the back end. So if you guys see that the site runs really well, you can thank Dustin for that. So thank you all so much for being here. Nos vemos la semana que entra. Hasta luego.